This video will explore the theme of control in Euripides Bacchae. As this theme is incredibly broad, I've chosen to narrow the focus and look at control through a spatial lens, or the topography of control in Euripides Bacchae. I will argue that by following the topography of the play across 3 different levels, you can see Dionysus gradually extending his control. These levels are the scenic, imagined, and real spaces. I will shortly further explain what these mean. By understanding the Bacchae as the play which works on multiple levels, sometimes simultaneously, the depth of control exerted by Dionysus is greater than just disrupting Pentheus' palace. He goes on to affect the workings of celestial bodies and the audience themselves. These spatial levels work like a palimpsest. Multiple scenic levels function on top of each other, generating layers of meaning which affect each other, but can also be read separately. The plot of the Bacchae is well known. Dionysus returns to his homeland Thebes to establish his cult. King Pentheus, from the same household, their cousin, forbids it. Dionysus drives the women of Thebes mad, and they flee the city to the mountain Kithairon. Pentheus, desperate to retain control over the city, is tricked by Dionysus into spying on their worship on Mount Kithairon. There, Agave, her sisters, and other Maenads kill him. Bacchae can be read as a struggle between Dionysus and Pentheus to control Thebes. This video explores that conflict through a topographical light. Topography is the appearance of an area. Theatrical topography looks at the landscape of the play. This can be done through scenic and imagined spaces. Scenic spaces are what you see on stage. For example, the Scenic building that represents the Palace of Thebes is a scenic space, such as the image on the right here where you have the palace represented by this large doorway. Imagined spaces aren't physically represented on stage. They are created through performance and descriptions, visible in the mind's eye of the audience. One example of an imagined space in the Bacchae comes in this speech, where a messenger describes the Maenads' worship on Mount Kithairon. They all lay sleeping, their bodies relaxed. Some lay on their backs upon fir branches, others, in no order, rested their heads on the ground in Oakleys, chastely. Though the mountain and the Maenads are not physically depicted on stage, the audience is given a vivid image of them through this speech. Metatheatrically, there is also the real space. In this case, let us suppose it's the theatre of Dionysus in Athens, as these plays are reperformed in many different theatres. I will argue that the god Dionysus exerts control over these spatial levels as he establishes his Dionysiac cult. Firstly, Dionysus and Pentheus' power struggle is shown on a scenic level. Pentheus, as he attempts to keep control, orders the disguised Dionysus to be imprisoned, in this line where he orders him to be shut up near the horses' corn cribs. This makeshift prison was likely shown in the Scenic. The palace becomes a prison, showing how scenic spaces can also have versatile functions and many layers of meaning. Dionysus does not only escape from this prison, but also causes an earthquake, here calling on the goddess Earthquake. The chorus remark that this is destroying the house. See, here on the columns, the stone lintels are falling apart. He thus profoundly disrupts Pentheus' control and literally shakes up the seat of power in Thebes. This was likely shown through minimal special effects and choral dancing, and it's a wonderful metaphor for the power struggle and also combined scenic and imagined spaces, showing they were not a strict dichotomy. As when the chorus sing about the columns' collapse, it's unlikely that physically occurred, but rather the effect was created through their movement and in the audience's imagination. In a different video, Dr. Piccola talks about the collapse of the royal house as the collapse of Pentheus' mind, and the end of his resistance to Dionysus. Later on, Dionysus mirrors Pentheus' behaviour, ordering him to go into the house. This shows that power has changed hands. Pentheus has been unable to keep this stranger captive, lost his palace through an earthquake, and is ordered into this profoundly damaged space. When Dionysus orders him to come out at once before the house, he does so. He will never return to the house alive. By tracking who controls entrances to and exits from the house, you can see the change in control dynamics. Dionysus controls the scenic space, mirroring his wider control in the play. Imagined spaces show that which is almost impossible to show physically. In this case, Dionysus' control extends from his control of the polis, the city of Thebes, to his control of the wider world, or, as the Greeks would say, the cosmos. When he's under Dionysus' control, Pentheus says that he sees 2 suns in the sky and 2 Thebes. The emphasis on Pentheus saying that he sees these visions highlights that this very likely wasn't shown on stage. These are imagined spaces for the audience that Pentheus is experiencing. By giving us this description of his hallucination, the audience is able to share in his vision. Pentheus' double vision may not simply be insanity. We know from the messenger's speech that Dionysus can perform incredible feats, such as pulling a tree down to earth, so Pentheus' vision may be real. Dionysus may be warping reality. Pentheus' double vision could be read as a manifestation of their power struggle. The two suns may represent him and Dionysus, two challengers attempting to control Thebes, two sons of the house. Pentheus' death comes as he falls out of the sky and is torn apart by his mother, begging her to remember that he is her son. He falls like the sun setting, while Dionysus rises, bringing a new dawn for Thebes. This double vision is very difficult to physically represent. The vivid imagined space created in brief moments like this extends the power struggle onto a cosmic level. We know that the play was produced after Euripides' death, in the context of the Great Dionysia Festival, held in honour of Dionysus in the Theatre of Dionysus in Athens. The audience sat on temporary bleachers, and many of them on the grassy slope of the Acropolis rock, looking down at the stage and beyond it to Athens and the mountains surrounding it. This real space seems to be exploited in the play in ways that are rather intriguing. The setup of the audience mirrors how the Maenads are described by Dionysus in this line. They sit upon the cliffs in the open air under the green fir trees. The audience watching the play would have also been sat in open air, likely some of them under green fir trees, on what could be described as akin to a cliff on the Acropolis. This is one of the lines that opens the play. It's in a prelude given by Dionysus to the audience. As the fourth wall is already somewhat broken by the speech being directed at the audience, it eases them into this meta-theatrical parallel. By mirroring the imagined Maenads with the situation of the audience, Dionysus essentially casts the audience as his followers. This could either make them uncomfortable with the association, or subconsciously side with Dionysus, or a mix of the two. It's easy to see Athens as Thebes, and the mountains across, or the Acropolis they were sat on, as Cathaidon. This pulls the audience further into the play, creating an intense level of involvement, reminding us that the full effect of these plays is rooted in their performance. It should be unsurprising that a play following the god of theatre would exploit this meta-theatricality. By utilising the real space, effectively casting the audience as his followers, Dionysus gains control by almost subconsciously getting the audience to side with him. To conclude, by using 3 different topographical levels, you can track Dionysus' control in the Bacchae on these different levels. The scenic space shows the social control, namely the control of the house and the city. The imagined space shows the control on a cosmic level, namely nature and the wider world. And the real space shows the meta-theatrical control over the audience. These spaces function through performance, showing the value of understanding Bacchae's performance rather than just the text. Here is some further reading for anyone who is interested, and here is a list of illustrations used in this PowerPoint. Thank you so much for watching.